being in the industry, dealing with the startups since I left university in 2009, and being on the desk as a hedge fund trader, one thing that I've learned, whenever a new technology comes, and a lot of people would compare blockchain, everything to the internet, is 3 stages that I think are the most important one. One is denial or speculation, i.e. when Bitcoin started, everyone said that no, it's just a fraud, it's money laundering, it's a bubble, it's not gonna last or anything. The second stage is more of a test stage. When the community, the government, investors started to look at it from a perspective that, okay, I think this technology does have some sort of a use, so let's go and then see that how it is changing the world. The third one is the adoption. When it is fully adopted like internet is today. What do you guys think that in what stage we are in when it comes to blockchain? Anyone wants to shout out? Are we in the denial? Are we in test? Are we in adoption? Exactly. Because now governments, regulators, investors, they are more getting involved in this one. Speaking about the regulators and what we have learned in the past, a lot of regulators have come back and then they said, look, Google made their own regulation. They said, not going to do it. Facebook is not going to do it. And the next guest is actually an ex-employee from a Facebook, and he provides an advisory service to a family office for blockchain. So what I really wanted to learn from him is that, yes, the advertisements are banned on a Facebook, on Google, but now the biggest thing is the community, because Facebook and Google, they have stopped it. There are still ways to go use the backdoor to do them. People create like 40 or 50 different accounts, and when we look at any project as an advisor, said forget about it. But another way of doing it is an airdrop, but you have to do the right airdrop. So what I'd like to invite Henry on the stage now to share that his experience from a Facebook and as an advisor to a family office can help us to learn. Thank you.
Hello. All right, let's test this out. All right, this works. Well, thank you for inviting me to the conference. First time to Tallinn. It took me a while to get here from Austin, Texas. How many of you guys know where Austin, Texas is? There's one, two. There's a bunch of you guys. South by Southwest? That's usually the one that people go to a lot. So I went from Austin to New York and Zurich, Frankfurt, and Amsterdam, finally in Tallinn. So here I am, very excited to be here. I heard the summertime, it lasts only a few weeks, and I believe I caught a good time. And where I like to say that I brought the sun from Texas. Good to be here. So I spent about 2.5 years at Facebook. The last 2.5 years, very important 2.5 years. I watched the election in the U.S. and I watched all the things we are talking about now from internal perspective happen. So that was a lot of fun. I'm sure it's a lot of fun for you guys to watch today. But yeah, so I was in advertising, in e-commerce. Some of my clients you may have heard before, ClassPass and Soylent, Everlane. Many of them have raised 20 million plus in VC funding. And I was helping directly with the CMO and head of marketing to advise their strategy to how to grow their revenue. So some of these advertisers are the most sophisticated advertisers in the world. Besides the gamers, the e-commerce advertisers are most technical. They care about pricing, impressions, and clicks, right? And I'm able to kind of bring that knowledge back and bring it into blockchain. So what do I do now that I've left Facebook? As just like everyone here, I've caught the bug for blockchain. I truly believe that it's going to create a new layer of the internet. And I've joined a company or a family office called Yeomans Capital. And it's a family office from a new crypto investor named David Johnston. So David was very early on in the blockchain world. He converted all his US dollars into Bitcoin in 2012. Now we have a family office. And he was advisor to Vitalik, and he was part of the first ICO Mastercoin. So when I saw his track record, and I wanted to learn more about the space, and so I decided to join forces with him. And these are the little things that, these are the things that we've done as a family office. And from his experience, he founded the first angel group in the space. You can look it up in 2013 with Michael Turpin and all the originals for the blockchain companies. And then he was also the founder for dApps Fund. And today we're by far the largest family office that only invests in cryptocurrencies. We're 100% in. So other family offices are preserving wealth, and our least risky asset is a crypto hedge fund. So we're very aggressive in the way that we're sort of a little VC fund that comes in very early stage. So I can't talk much about how other firms invest, but I'd love to share about how we invest as a firm, and give you perspective on a sophisticated investor in the US and how we're looking at the ecosystem today. Hope that helps. Cool. So we only invest in open source, decentralized, tokenized, projects, and permissionless, of course. And if it's not open source, we don't touch it. We truly believe that the key part of this blockchain movement is the fact that everybody can build on it, right? When you have a closed system like Facebook, Google, when you want a feature, you have to ask for permission. You have to ask someone to allow you to do that. You have to work for them, right? Right now, you can take the code and you can run with it, and you can contribute however you want, and you get pay for it. You get compensated through tokens. So there's a new incentive structure for open source development that we've never seen before, and that doesn't require permission, and that's not controlled by a centralized party. And we believe in the mission so much that that's all we touch. Every project that we invest in, they have to open source and they have to be decentralized. And these are some of the projects that we're invested in. And some of them you may have seen before: Factom, OneChain, Polymath. Those are OneChain is a $1 billion project, and Polymath has raised $100 million. Factom has been around since 2014. Was one of the first companies to issue their tokens right after Ethereum. And Multicoin was recently invested by Andreessen Horowitz and Chris Dixon. So we're very excited to have prominent VCs joining us in the US. And I want to go back to this quote: everything that can be decentralized will be decentralized, and we really believe in that. And I think it means something a little bit different for me than David. For David, it was more this libertarian mission of, I want to opt out of US dollars. For me, this has happened way before blockchain, and I kind of want to give you my view of how we came to the world today. And I think everyone's familiar with this, right? I think this is one of the first forms of decentralization that people kind of miss to talk about. We have already decentralized the taxi system through Uber, although it's still a centralized platform, but we've decentralized enough that, drivers now have a say. And same with these guys, right? We've decentralized the hotel industry, right? That is one of the first forms of decentralization that we often don't talk about. And not fully decentralized because you have a centralized platform that's taking fees, but it's a lot better than what it was before, and then people who have houses and apartments can actually rent them out and provide them, and you're creating economic sources, and we're changing the world in that way. And even before that, Facebook decentralized information, right? Before we had to trust news sources, TV channels, whatever they feed you, you have to listen because there's only a few channels in every country. And now you're actually able to get diverse information through Facebook, whether you like it or not. They still control the algorithm behind it. So it's not open source. But, it was much better than before, than people spoon-feeding you information from news channels and TV, right? And, we truly believe that the blockchain industry has the same problem, or has the same benefit of network effect. And then that's extremely important. Coming from Facebook, I think I know it better than most people that with an Instagram, WhatsApp, Facebook, the success behind these platforms were the network effects, where the number of people that join on these platforms have benefited everybody else exponentially. And let's talk about network effects. It didn't happen overnight, right? I think today in the blockchain world, people are thinking about how do I get to 100,000 members, or how do I get to these milestones? It didn't happen overnight. And actually, Facebook started very slowly in the beginning, in 2004, all the way to 2005, 6, 7, and it grew exponentially, right? Because that's how network effect works. Initially, you want this core group of users that use it every day, that want to come back and tell their friends about it, that are excited, and then it explodes. And all their friends tell their friends, and then the cycle begins, and that's how the network effect starts. And you can't just create that artificially. You have to earn it. You have to start with a group that really truly care about your product, right? And it took how many years? 4 or 5 years for Facebook to launch advertising. And 2013 was when they truly launched mobile advertising, and that's when the company went IPO. So from 2004, 2005 to 2013, Facebook took 8 years, right? And the people forget that. They think it's overnight. They think Zuck, got to $1 billion very quickly. No, it took a long time, right? And crypto is already faster than that. And let's talk about crypto. So this is blockchain.info. This was pulled in April 4th. Right now, the number is pretty similar. It's estimated we only have about 25 million users in the world that hold wallets, right? And about 5 million users hold more than $100 worth of cryptos in their wallet. So as a user base, globally, we're nothing. 25 million is not even 10% of Instagram, not even 10% of Snapchat, right? So we're very early in this world when we talk about network effects, and not many people have wallets yet. So it's very difficult for people to build consumer apps when people aren't even on the blockchain. It's like trying to build Amazon when no one was using the internet, right? So that's our belief. But it's coming soon, and it's accelerating at a crazy speed because these larger companies that have existing user base are coming in and airdropping and producing blockchain-related products such as Line with 200 million, and we all know these guys. They're making news everywhere. We're hoping that in Q4 or early next year we'll see a lot more crypto wallet holders due to these larger platforms, and more will come in, right? And that'll accelerate from 25 million to hopefully 400 million. That will be 10x, and then the price will go accordingly. So now that we mentioned the network effects and how we expect them to grow, but we have to grow it in the right way, in a way that the price of these tokens will appreciate, right? Otherwise, as investors, if the price stays the same, then it doesn't really matter. Then it's not an investment, right? So how do we gather the appreciation of value? And we have to talk about the problem with token velocity. I'm not sure how many of you guys are familiar with token velocity. It's published by Multicoin Capital, which is a hedge fund that we're invested in. They do a lot of research in this space, but basically, token velocity is saying that in order to capture value, your tokens have to have a reason to be held, right? Because at the end of the day, in order for anything to go up, the demand needs to exceed supply. And I think that's pretty obvious. But in many cases, the token supply, the token velocity is close to 1, and its demand is equal to supply, because what's happening is when you have a ticketing app and you have to buy this token to buy a ticket, and then the venue accepts the ticket in tokens and immediately converts back to US dollar, then you have a buyer and seller that are doing the same thing, and then nothing gets captured in the middle. Nobody wants to hold these tokens. Does that make sense to everyone? Right? If things are moving, if the tokens are moving so quickly and has a very high token velocity, then we can capture the value in these tokens, and the price will never appreciate, because no matter how many people use it, and once they use it and they sell it back to US dollars, then it doesn't matter, right? There'd be no price appreciation. So, yeah, value appreciation would be 0 in that case. So how do we get people to hold it, right? We need people to hold it, and HODL is right. If there weren't people that are HODLing, then the price would never appreciate in Bitcoin. But there's a problem with HODL, right? Why did people HODL Bitcoin? It was all for speculation, right? It's not sustainable. People think that Bitcoin would one day appreciate in value, that would be a good investment, that's why they hold it. But in reality, who's using Bitcoin to pay for everything in their lives today? There's not much utility there. It's expensive, it's slow, right? But people who buy Bitcoin aren't necessarily thinking about using it. They're thinking about it as a great investment to hold it long term. But that is the definition of speculation, because you can't use it. There's no real world usage. Because guess what? Then you're a security, right? Then you're giving out dividends. So gas in NEO technically, will very much be a security. By holding NEO, then you're getting gas. Then that's the definition of a dividend. So we're playing in this gray area where we have to incentivize people to stake them, but in a way that that doesn't touch the boundary of a security, because we want to stay within the utility world, right? So yeah, in this case, it could be someone that stake a lot of tokens, and they get some sort of exclusive usage. In the case of tickets, buying movie tickets or concert tickets, then you have exclusive access to the backstage or whatever it may be, right? So you can incentivize people in many different ways for staking. And second part, you can charge the network partners, right? There could be a network fee. So imagine an example of decentralized Uber, and the drivers pay to be part of the network because they believe that they can make more money in the network, right? So it's kind of like paying a taxi license. You pay to play, right? And that's what Augur does. That's what many of the platform does. And you can make this work as long as the supply becomes less and less, and demand is higher. As long as you have the end users that would support the ecosystem. So in this case, the riders would need to increase as the drivers come in for financial incentives. And then as the drivers come in, you can burn the tokens that they pay for, and then the supply goes down, the demand goes up, and then the price appreciates. Does that make sense? I hope it does. Cool. And last but not least, one of our first companies that we invested in, Dave is currently the executive chairman of Factom. Factom does a pretty good job, and actually is one of the only companies that does the burn and mint model. which Multicoin talks a lot about. So how does that work? So there's a set inflation per month, and there's a set US dollar conversion rate with tenth of a penny, so 0.001. And if more people use Factom to validate their data than the inflation, then obviously the price will go up, right? So it's same concept. At the end of the day, it's demand and supply. So if you want the price to go up, you have to have more demand than supply. That is, at the end of the day, that's the name of the game. So however but you can't just not have inflation because the world is growing. The users are growing. And then you would limit the number of people using it because you appreciate the price so much that people can't use it. So you need to have some sort of inflation, but you want the price to go up. How do you do it? You need to find this equilibrium, right? You need the demand to be a little bit higher than supply each time or over time. And in fact, Factom has done a really good job of burning the tokens that people use and supplying more of it, but what they supply hopefully is less than what people use, and then the price would go up. Does that make sense? And happy to share more data about Factom and more research about Factom. And from an investor perspective, let's talk about a little bit about valuation, and this is more US focused. In the US, ICOs are pretty much dead for the foreseeable future. So we have to invest in pre-sales, right? And pre-sales are tricky in a way because we're investing in the company, the equity of the company, and a lot of times that will give us the tokens of the founder tokens. In this case, many cases where it's 20% of the supply or circulation goes to the team, and we invest about 25%, say as an example, and investors get about 5%. So if you have $100 million project in the market cap, then realistically the pre-sale guys will only get about 5 million, and obviously we have priority over buying tokens in the future or however we structure it. But that's typically the model in the US. And I want to show you guys this because it kind of gives you a perspective, because there aren't that many $100 million projects out there in the coin market cap. It's not that easy to get to. And these valuations are sky high at the moment. And I think we need to be more realistic in terms of how we're raising it as a company. In terms of token allocation, what we like to see is, over half of the circulation of tokens would go to the communities, because that's what you're serving. That's who you're serving, right? I think 51% is pretty reasonable. And 15 to 20% to founders and team members, reasonable. That's sort of the industry standard. And you have 30% left for investors and whatever other purposes that you can delegate to. But I think those are the most important metrics that we look at. And we only typically come in at between $10 to $20 million valuation. So we come in very early as a key advisors to these projects. And I wanted to give you guys a reminder or sort of history note for Ethereum. When they launched in 2014, they raised $18 million for their 13% of their tokens, and it was a fairly high valuation at the time for $141 million in 2014. But then it took them about 3 years to 5x their market cap, right, in 2017. So it takes time. A lot of these projects believe that, okay, we can launch, we can get to $1 billion in valuation tomorrow. It doesn't work like that. Facebook took about 8 years. Ethereum took about 3 years, right? To get to 700 million in valuation. And then the network effect kicked in, the developers came in, and projects came in to build on top of it, and then they became, 70 billion? Where did it go? Right, 70 billion. They went 100x in 2017. But before that, it was a very modest growth. 5x in 3 years, that's not the crypto growth that we see today. So what we're seeing today in growth is very dramatic. And I think as investors, we believe that that'll slow down. And if it doesn't slow down, then there's a problem. So community matters. It really does matter, because what happens when you launch a project that you have a circulation of $1 billion and you don't have any projects to support it, right? Then it comes crashing down. That's like saying that you're trying to raise at a higher valuation for a startup and you don't have anything to support it, and you have to raise a down round, right? Nobody wants to do that. No investor want to be part of that, right? And then the morale goes down, and the team members are super happy that we got to however many dollars, we're all rich now. Then they forget that they're locked up for however many years, and then the price comes crashing down, and they realize that, okay, well, it's much harder to bring it right back up after it crashes, right? And I want to remind you guys that Facebook really did take a number of years for them to get to the speed where they are to grow. So it'll take us, this blockchain industry as a whole, number of years, 3 to 5 years, for us to get to adoption, right? And we're very much in the testing phase, and we'll be in it for quite a while with regulators, and then we need to be patient, right? And I think, if there's anything that I would love to recommend to all our companies, think about 3 to 5 years, not 12 months, not 6 months, not raising ICOs, and because you can't really run away with it. Then you're a fraud. So, think long term and focus on the community, and the right kind of community, which you're bringing the engineers, you're bringing the developers that are actually building on these open source, and you're going to these meetups locally to convince developers to build on top of it, and compensate them in a way that's fair and that they're excited to work with you, right? That's what Ethereum did, and have the right token economics. And start with a modest valuation, not for me as an investor, but for you as a project, because the last thing you want to do is to have this happen, right? You don't want this to happen. And I'm not going to say which company, which project this is, but you can go look up on CoinMarketCap and see the shape of the graph. But yeah, this is the last thing you want. And what you want is a slowly but surely growth and hockey stick up and to the right, like the one at Facebook, right? So once again, these are the projects that we're investing in and we're working with, and we're part of about, I think, 20 plus projects. We're based in Austin, Texas. And yeah, if you guys would like to connect afterwards, I'll be here. And thank you for your time.